Good evening. Before we begin this meeting, I just want to check with trustees online. Trustees attending remotely, I would like to verify your presence. Please turn your cameras on if possible. Trustee Agnew, are you there?
Yeah, I am here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Kelly, are you there? Trustee Kelly? Trustee Ohan Janada? Okay, Trustee Ohan Janada is trying to get on. Trustee Powell, are you there? Trustee Powell? Okay, so we have a couple of trustees who are not there. Call to order. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Halton Catholic District School Board on Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and will also be posted on the board's YouTube channel. Trustees, in order to be recognized, please use the hand up feature in Teams to be automatically placed in queue. And please remember to turn your desk mics on when you speak. Also, please remember that if you speak and you're not recognized or you do not have the floor, your mics will be muted. Tonight, we have a lot of guests in our boardroom. Very warm welcome to our Faith Jubilee 2025 Steering Committee. Welcome to this meeting. And with that, we shall move on to item 1.1, land acknowledgement, the opening prayer, the Our Father, and the national anthem. And our staff to please start us off with the land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lakes
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect 4 directions: lands,
waters, plants,
animals,
and ancestors
that walked before us.
All of these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thank you. I would now like to request Monsignor Khan of St. Andrew Parish in Oakville and Vicar of Education to lead us in the opening prayer and the Our Father. Monsignor Khan would like to come to the center.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you sent your Son into a world where the wheat must be winnowed from the chaff, and evil clings even to what is good. Let the fire of your Spirit purge us of greed and deceit, so that purified we may find our peace in you, and you may delight in us. Grant this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
And our staff to please play the national anthem.
Oh,
Thank you, Monsignor Khan, for leading us in your prayers, in the opening prayer. Really appreciate your presence here tonight, and you're always welcome to come to our board meetings. Item 1.2, motions arising from in-camera. There were no motions from the in-camera session that will require a vote in the public session. Our next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda, and do trustees want any item removed from the consent agenda? Trustee Carabella, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to take out consent agenda item 6.1.2.2. It's the policy I-46 trustee communication.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Trustees, any further items? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Vice Chair Murphy. Seconded by, looking for a seconder, Trustee Saunders. I'll take this to a recorded vote. Trustee O'Hearn Janara.
I'm opposed.
Vice Chair Murphy.
I'm in favor.
Trustee Kelly. Trustee Saunders.
In favor.
Trustee Agnew.
Opposed.
Trustee Filbert. Trustee McGuire.
In favor.
Trustee Yeboah.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Powell. Trustee Kennedy.
In favor.
Trustee Powell. Trustee Kelly. We have 4 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstention. Motion carries. The agenda is approved. We now move on to item number 3, declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared?
Yes, I'd like to declare 9.2 Resolution 1.
Trustee Saunders declares a conflict of interest on the first item. 9.2, right?
Yep.
Do we have any other conflicts of interest for tonight? I received one by email from Trustee Kelly, but Trustee Kelly is not here in the meeting. Thank you, trustees. We shall now move on to our next order of business, which is presentations. 4.1, senior staff updates, Jubilee 2025. Director Klein, please introduce the presentation.
Chair, I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Nar, who has been working with this amazing committee for the last while, and she'll give you a sense of what they've been up to and what we're looking forward to in 2025.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair. To start off, I would like to really acknowledge our committee. We have our steering committee. Many of the members are with us in the audience tonight, and certainly under the leadership of Vince Monaco and Lori Dover, who are taking the lead on this. But we have a lot of enthusiastic committee members, and you may recall a few weeks ago, I guess it was, Director Klein had talked about the certificate in Catholic leadership that's taking place at St. Jerome's, and we have a number of staff that are participating in that. And all of the staff who are participating in that are part of this committee as well. So really enthusiastic group of people. So tonight we're very pleased to share with you our plans for engaging Halton Catholic District School Board in the Jubilee Year of Hope. If we can go on to the next slide, thanks, Elizabeth. In May 2024, Pope Francis officially declared 2025 a year of Jubilee through the papal bull titled Spes non confundit, translated as Hope Does Not Disappoint. The Jubilee's theme, Pilgrims of Hope, invites faithful to journey together in renewing trust in God's promise and embracing a future filled with hope. The Jubilee Year of Hope is a sacred time that's designated by the Catholic Church to inspire spiritual renewal, deepen faith, foster mercy, forgiveness, and unity among people. And it encourages individuals and communities to reflect on their role as bearers of hope in communities and working together in a world grounded in love, reconciliation, and solidarity. Jubilee years have traditionally been marked with a pilgrimage, originally to the Roman basilicas of St. Peter and St. Paul, and later on other signs were added, such as the Holy Door. And you can see on our table in front of me, we have a replica of the Holy Door that I'll speak to later, but we'll be traveling with our cross throughout the year. At the heart of the pilgrimage idea is the hope that for those who are set out on a pilgrimage, that it will lead to an encounter with God. A Jubilee year is celebrated every 25 years. It was changed from 50 years back in 1470. But a pope can also proclaim an extraordinary Jubilee year, as we had back in 2015 with the Year of Mercy. So the official opening of the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome will take place on December the 24th, and it will begin in the diocese around the world on the feast day of the Holy Family, December 28th and 29th. Go to the next slide, please. And so a little bit about the logo that is used throughout the world on the Jubilee. There are 4 stylized figures on it representing humanity coming from the 4 corners of the earth. They embrace each other, indicating solidarity and fraternity to unite all people. And they also show that it is a journey together, that none of us are alone on this journey. There's the sign of the cross that holds it as a sign of faith and of hope. And the lower part of the cross, you may notice, turns into the shape of an anchor that's let down into the waves as a sign of hope. And of course, the waves are recognizing that a pilgrimage of life is, or transformation, is not always a smooth journey, but we have that hope and that faith in that journey. Go to the next slide. This is a year that brings opportunities for spiritual renewal and deepened faith for all. It is with this renewal in spirit that all of us can be bearers of hope for each other. And that'll be one of the areas of focus for our committee and the initiatives across our system. It is a hope that our staff, students, and community engage in the many opportunities that will provide in a way that help them experience their own pilgrimage and journey closer to God. And Renewing the Promise, which is our letter from the Ontario bishops from a number of years ago, has called us to ensure that our students always have an opportunity to encounter God in our schools. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to bring that to life in our schools across the system. So we have 6 pilgrimage churches that are across the diocese that Bishop Crosby has designated for this holy year. And we're so blessed again to have Monsignor Kahn here with us this evening, as he's the pastor of St. Andrew's Church in Oakville, and that is the designated church in Halton as a pilgrimage church. And so over the course of the year, we'll be planning a number of opportunities to engage in pilgrimage to St. Andrew's Church. And I know that Monsignor Kahn has been very enthusiastic about inviting us into his church, and over the course of the year, we'll certainly be able to engage in a lot of different opportunities. Engaging in the Jubilee year provides us with an opportunity to bring both of our believing pillar and our belonging pillar to life across the district. The priorities in our believing pillar include a focus on joyful Catholic learning environment that's rooted in justice, compassion, and service. And this is what's really at the heart of the reason for a Jubilee year, a year of forgiveness and reconciliation, inviting people into relationship with God. It's what the bishops of Ontario called for in Renewing the Promise as well. And it is an opportunity to celebrate hope within the home, school, and parish triad, and really working with our parishes to bring this to life. In our belonging pillar, we are focused on accompaniment and building connections and shared purpose with community. So coming together as a community to engage in a year of hope is a beautiful expression of this. And as well, it aligns, of course, to our theological theme, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Our current focus is in 2024-25 this year has been on kindness and healing sacraments. And we've built that into all of our faith formation initiatives across our system this year. And next year, walking humbly with God, which is the final pericope of Micah, it will bring us back to the heart of pilgrimage and accompanying each other. So on to some of the initiatives that our enthusiastic committee has been putting together. We really want to make sure that we have opportunities for everyone to fully engage in this Jubilee year. And as I said earlier, there's many are here that have helped to put these plans together, are here to support and to be a part of the blessing of our cross as it starts the journey. So I've got on the screen there for you the list of the focus areas of the committees, or if you will, subcommittees. So we're spending time focusing on an actual pilgrimage of the cross and the activities that surround that. We're focused on how we're going to engage staff in the Year of Hope, our students in engaging them, looking at parents and parishes and engaging them together, and of course, a focus on St. Andrew's Church and how we highlight that as a pilgrimage church. So with our initiatives this evening, we start with a blessing of the cross prior to the start of its journey. You may recall this cross was actually, we started a journey of the cross throughout our system a few years ago. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we had to suspend the cross traveling across our system. But we begin this evening with the cross and a service to bless it. And then following this, the cross will travel to St. Andrew's Parish, where families from St. Vincent's School will be carrying the cross into St. Andrew's and spend Christmas with the parish. It will then make its way through all of our school sites and our board sites with activities for reflection and prayer, so that all of the students can engage in the pilgrimage in some way with the cross. Along with the cross, the replica of the Holy Door will travel. That will provide opportunities to learn about the significance of the Holy Door, and as well a journal, which I have here, and I'll pass it around to trustees later on, because we would hope that you would take an opportunity to sign it. But this journal was the journal that first started out with the cross when we started with the journey a few years ago. And so there's already things that are written in there, pictures and that from experiences from the different schools that it's already traveled to. This journal will continue to travel around with the cross and will encourage our schools and sites to write messages, prayers, whatever they feel is a way to engage in it. During Catholic Education Week, so the cross will be making its way to all of our school sites, but in Catholic Education Week, it will make its way back to St. Andrew's Parish, and there we will celebrate Catholic education, and it'll be part of intertwined with our journey with Jesus as well, because that takes place during Catholic Education Week. And we'll have a liturgical celebration at St. Andrew's Church on the Thursday of Catholic Education Week, which is May the 8th. And then following that, it will continue to travel with the door and the book to the rest of the sites throughout the district, and then return back to St. Andrew's at the close of the Jubilee year. We will also be highlighting heroes of hope throughout the year across our system. So we have a lot of people that are across our system doing extraordinary things every day, and being hopeful people or bearers of hope for others. And that's staff, students, parishioners, community partners. So we'll be highlighting all of those throughout the course of the year. And that's inspired by the diocese, which is also has a Heroes of Hope initiative as well, where they'll be celebrating various Heroes of Hope throughout the diocese. For faith formation opportunities, there's going to be a number of things that are connected to the Jubilee year and the Pilgrims of Hope theme. Many of our current sessions focus on bringing hope to the world through kindness and mercy and healing, which are the key themes in the Jubilee year. And next year, our focus for many of the formation activities will be on that walking humbly part of our theological theme, which draws us deeply into the journey. Lots of opportunities for the students to learn about and explore the holy door that will travel with the cross, and as well to engage with the cross and writing messages, creating artwork that demonstrate hope, all kinds of different things that the committee's planning to share with our students across the system so that they can engage in the year. We also have purchased the prayer cards. So you have prayer cards at your tables. Those will go home to every family and staff member across the system in January. We've purchased, or we're in the process of getting the banners printed that'll be on display at the schools, as well as an outside banner so that there's a visible sign of hope outside of our schools. And they will be sent out in January when they're done. As far as communication goes, we will be doing featured stories promoting the Journey of the Cross, Heroes of Hope, and all the activities that take place in the schools throughout the year. Certainly promoting our faith formation opportunities that we have here, but also within the diocese, and things like St. Jerome's and that when they have various speakers in. Of course, the Jubilee banners visible at our school, and social media promotion. And the closing of the Jubilee year will take place on the Feast of the Epiphany on January the 6th in 2026. And I've included here just a verse from the official hymn from the Jubilee year. If you get a chance, you can Google it, you can go online and find it. It is a beautiful hymn that really captures the true meaning of a Jubilee year. And so next steps for our committee is to continue to meet and put together resources and supports throughout the school year. We will certainly have a administrator's toolkit that'll be available for all of our administrators to bring forward into their schools. We're certainly sharing this with our principals at the principals meeting in January. We've already sent out a memo informing everybody about this. And we'll continue to engage in it in different ways. And some of it will be organic because as the year rolls on, different things will come forward and the committee will continue to meet and put together activities for the schools. And then finally, some of the resources, and if you have time, interesting to look at, but some of the places where we've gone to gather some information and some ideas around what we can do to engage in the year. Certainly the Bull of Indiction, go right to that on the Vatican website where it outlines all of Pope Francis's message. As well, the Diocese of Hamilton has put together a page on the Jubilee year with a lot of resources. Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops as well, and OXTA, of course, has been building that into the theme for preparation for Catholic Education Week. So that's where we're drawing a lot of our resources. And then, of course, with such a creative committee, they come up with many things as well. And at this point, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Nar, for this very detailed and comprehensive plan. I will now open up the floor to trustees for questions. Trustees, do we have questions or comments for Superintendent Nar and the committee sitting there? Yeah, please put your hand up. Trustee Uhanchanada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, to Superintendent Nar and the entire committee. So thank you for your quiet strength. You know, you're always at the table, but there's a lot of work that's gone behind this, and we really appreciate the quiet strength that you have for guiding us in the right direction. So just really a sense of appreciation.
Thank you, Trustee Uhanchanada. If other trustees would like to comment or questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Superintendent Nar, and thank you to the committee. Okay. Yeah, thank you to the committee for putting this plan together. Thank you for the for your support. Without that, it would have been really difficult to achieve. And we look forward to the rollout of this plan next year. And don't forget to invite some of those trustees there to the events. Looking forward to it. Dr. Klein, you'd like to add anything?
I'll just echo the gratitude for that. And I wonder if the committee can maybe stand up so we could recognize them and thank them.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
At
Superintendent.
this point, could I invite Monsignor Khan to lead us in blessing the cross?
Sure, yes,
Thank you.
Monsignor Khan.
Before the blessing of the cross, however, you're in for a little surprise. The idea of Jubilee is not a modern invention or an invention of something that happened just a few centuries ago. It is well rooted in the Old Testament scriptures. And you are invited on the 29th of December to St. Andrews when the school board officially begins the pilgrimage with the cross, with families who will present the cross. When what makes the pilgrim churches in the Diocese of Hamilton pilgrim churches are a special installation which we have, which will be permanent at St. Andrews. And that is a replica of the Holy Door at St. Peter's in Rome. If you want to be really excited by stuff like this, come to St. Andrews and you can see it in its crate, which we haven't taken it out of yet. Pope Francis changed some of the experience of the Holy Door in the summer this year when he gave an interview and he spoke about how the Holy Year is an observance for the people of God throughout the world. And not everybody will be able to go to Rome to personally walk through the Holy Doors, especially the Holy Door at St. Peter's. So he asked each of the dioceses around the world to have special pilgrimage points where the people of God can come on pilgrimage and where they can prayerfully join in the experience of the Holy Door. And that's why we have this very special replica of the Holy Door at St. Andrews all during the year. So on the 29th, each parish in the diocese has a special rite to begin the Holy Year, but the pilgrim churches have a much longer rite. We're absolutely thrilled to have the Halton Catholic District School Board begin the pilgrim process, the pilgrim journey at that 9:30 Mass. So please do come and join us. So let us hear the shofar. Very good. Nobody said it was going to be pretty. So you can imagine, I mean, we hear about it in the Psalms, we hear about it in the prophets, and the proclamation of the Holy Year was usually done from a high place, a hill, or from a building, and that is the sound that they would have heard. I invite everybody to please stand. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The God of hope, who in the Word made flesh, fills us with every joy and hope in the faith, through the power of the Holy Spirit, be with you. Amen. Let us pray. O Father, you are the hope that does not disappoint, the beginning and the end of all things. Bless the start of this pilgrim journey with the cross. Behind the glorious cross of your Son, this is a time for this community of grace. Bind up the wounds of hearts that are broken, Loosen the chains that hold us as slaves of sin, prisoners of hatred, and grant your people the joy of the Spirit, so that they may walk with this cross with renewed hope toward their longed for destiny. Christ, your Son and our Lord, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen. My dear brothers and sisters, let us invoke the blessing of the Lord, that he may bless this cross. May the Lord renew our hearts, our minds, and Christ our Lord. The Lord be with you. The Almighty God bless you, the Father, Son, Spirit. Go in the peace of God.
Thank you, Superintendent Nar and team once again. Thank you for the con. With that, we shall move on to next order of business, which is delegations. We have no delegations. We move on to item number 6, consent agenda items. The following items have been agreed upon at the agenda approval to stay on the consent agenda. Action item 6.1.1, 6.1.2, 6.1.2.1, and 6.1.2.3. There are a few noted items. There will be a single motion to approve the action items. There will be no discussion on the noted items. I will now read the motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve consent agenda items 6.1.1 and 6.1.2, which is made up of 6.1.2.1 and 6.1.2.3, as submitted at the December 17th, 2024 regular board meeting. May I have a mover for this, please? Looking for a mover. Trustee Carabella moves. Looking for a seconder, please.
Seconded.
Vice Chair Murphy seconds it. I'll take it to a recorded vote. Vice Chair Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee Kelly.
In favor?
Trustee Saunders.
In favor.
Trustee Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee Philbert. Trustee McGuire.
In favor?
Trustee Yeboah.
In favor?
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Powell.
Hi, I'm in favor.
Trustee Kennedy.
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn Chanada.
In favor?
We have 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstention. The consent agenda carries. Our next order of business is action items. Item 9.1. 9.1 is an amendment to motion 005/25 adopted at the November 19th, 2024 regular board meeting. This item was shared at the last board meeting as a notice of motion and is now an action item. Trustee O'Hearn Chanada, how would you like to proceed?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to withdraw the notice of motion.
Thank you, Trustee O'Hearn Chanada. We will skip over item 9.1 and we will move on to item 9.2. 9.2 is 2024-25 revised budget estimates. Superintendent Luft and your team, could you present the 2024-25 revised budget estimates, please?
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I'd like to start off by thanking the finance team for completing our 24-25 revised estimate statements. It was extremely challenging, but again, thank you, everyone. Trustees, as you've seen in the report, staff is presenting a balanced budget, and I'd like to start with some additional items that we now know that were not available at the time we did estimates back in June when we presented a compliant budget. Back in June, labor adjustments for teachers and PV and principals and vice principals were not known at that point. However, these two groups have now settled and the resulting, which has resulted in additional revenue and expenditures, which you'll see as part of this budget. We now know the actual enrollment for October, and it's higher than estimated. So that has impacted what our estimated enrollment is for the upcoming year. Elementary is higher by 95 average daily enrollment, 95 students over the course of the year. However, year over year is still down 203. Now, some positive news from that is that our JKs, our junior kindergarten students, are increasing. So it's higher by 30 over the estimates, and year over year is increased by 61. Secondary enrollment is up from estimates by 170 students, and year over year by 605 students. So some healthy growth in our secondary panel. And finally, the continuing education, our secondary credit students are up 89 relative to what they were at during our original estimates back in June. And finally, one other large impacting item was that Bill 124, we received some additional funding for, and the funding is now in line with what we expect the total cost will be, which is good news. Having said this, we still have our continuing challenges. We know that sick leave is an issue with majority of boards in this province, as we're not funded for the cost of the sick leave. CPP and EI continue to be an unfunded amount in our budgets. Inflationary pressures, although that the inflation is now more manageable, I think it was about 1.9% that came out today. We're still being impacted by the prior year's inflation. So that still is something that we are definitely working with. And finally, the number of students assisted through our special education programs continues to grow. But given that Bill 124 is not expected to have the impact originally expected, and that our overall enrollment has grown, we're able to make some adjustments and make some additions to the budget, to the current budget, or expand in some areas due to need. So Adam will look at some further on, but just some highlights. Elementary schools that were in a deficit at the end of 23-24, we were able to make those schools whole by using some of the reserve that we had prior and add those portions to the schools. This came out of the carry forwards from prior years. We added additional startup costs for our new schools. We added back contingency to the family of school superintendents to help with any issues at the schools. We added additional funding for textbooks. We added additional funding for faith formation. We have upgrades to our Wi-Fi, which were needed, upgrades to our cybersecurity, which is always something that we need to be focused on, as well as additional funding for IT devices that will be spread out through the system. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to hand it over to Adam, who will kind of run through the remaining part of the presentation. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Cross.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So we'll just go over some of the key items in a bit more detail. Aaron gave a good summary of some of the key kind of adds that we saw for revised estimates compared to our budget in June. So here's just a couple of charts that speak to the numbers that Aaron was referring to earlier. So looking at our year over year change from 23-24 actuals, we're up 402 students overall from an average daily enrollment perspective, 605 increase in secondary, and 202 decrease in elementary. Comparing to our original budget, we saw the 95 increase, and we saw it across all three kind of levels of the elementary panel, which is good news for us. And then in the secondary, we also saw a continued increase of 170 students for a total of 264.91. This is just showing those increases in a chart. So in comparison to prior years where we saw some of the elementary numbers going down, all numbers are positive across all areas of our school board for 24-25 enrollment. So looking at our revenue, the main increase to our revenue is through our core education funding. So we have about 33.5 million increase in core education funding compared to our estimates that we brought in June. And this is largely due to the update in our funding benchmarks because of the recent Bill 124 and even more recent collective agreement settlements. So you'll recall at estimates, and we'll see in a couple slides, that there was a placeholder for Bill 124 in June, but it was sitting in our other grants from the province. It's basically that's been removed and absorbed into the core education funding. And you can kind of see it on the second line, the responsive education programs decreased by 10 million. And that's largely due to that Bill 124 placeholder. We saw a couple of increases across some of the other revenue streams, the largest being education development charges. So if you recall from 2 weeks ago, we saw a significant increase in our education development charges compared to what we budgeted. So we've sort of right-sized that for our revised estimates. And just a reminder to the board that education development charges aren't included in our compliance calculations. So the ministry removes this funding. So while we're increasing our overall revenue by $8 million for educational development charges, it has no impact on compliance. It's just better reflecting where we're forecasting education development charges to be in 24-25. And then we saw an increase in before and after in childcare. So this was a combination of one additional childcare site and an increase of 5% in the rates, as well as an increase in some of the classrooms for that the providers are using for before and after programs. So to put that into context, when we're looking at the new funding model, because as you recall, this year the funding model has changed. So there are kind of 6 pillars or funds that our funding is broken down into now. There's the classroom staffing fund, there's the learning resources fund, special education fund, school facilities fund, student transportation fund, and then school board administration fund. So looking at our classroom staffing fund, this is where we see the largest change or impact of the settlement of Bill 124 and collective agreements. So those increases have been included in the benchmarks, and you can kind of see by the revenue with respect to staffing funding, there's significant increases across all the different components of the staffing fund, and that's due to the benchmarks. So the one that kind of jumps out there, the supplementary staffing allocation, there's a little bit more in that one, and that's just we had some deferred revenue from last year that when the ministry changed the funding formula, they're basically bringing all that income into, or all that deferred revenue into income this year to kind of clean the slate, for lack of a better description, for the new core ed funding going forward. So there's a pickup in supplementary staffing for some of the deferred revenue that we had sitting on our balance sheet as of year end. Then our learning resources fund. So this is kind of the supplementary. So classroom staffing is basically for the teachers, and the learning resource fund is everything else that goes into a school with respect to costs. So again, some of the benchmarks have changed as they tie into our salaries and wages. So per pupil allocation is also driven by salary and wages. It's just different rates in this fund compared to the classroom staffing fund, because there's different groups that are associated with this pool of funds compared to the classroom staffing, which is primarily just the teachers, so their collective bargaining units. So the main ones that we saw increases to, again, the per pupil because of the benchmarks and the increase in enrollment, and then school management. So the principal and vice principal grid changed for 24-25. This was new in the fall that came into effect. And so with that, we saw a significant increase in the funding to for those increased grid, or the increases in the grid to principals and vice principals. Special education funding. So similar to the classroom staffing, there is a component that's driven largely due to the benchmark increases, but also similar to what we saw in the supplementary staffing, we're bringing deferred revenue related to spec ed into revenue for 24-25. School facilities funds, is similar in terms of the impact is driven by the increase in enrollment. The benchmarks didn't really change for school facilities fund because that's more based on square footage plus a factor for enrollment. So that increase of 1.2 million is more so due to the increase in enrollment. And then our school board admin fund, so they changed the non-executive salary benchmark for school board admin, and that's showing the increase as a result of that change. And then this slide just talks about our debt charges. So we had a slight decrease in short-term interest for revised estimates compared to budget. And then on the capital side, we're reducing the school renewal usage in 24-25. You might recall from estimates, we were using a portion of our school renewal funds to offset operating costs. As a revised estimates, we don't feel we need to do that. So we've reduced our school renewal component accordingly. And then minor tangible capital assets is just fluctuates based on our need, and we're projecting an increased usage the MTCA increase because the overall revenue increase, and this is just a percentage calculation of that component. So this, I know it's kind of small to see, but this is just a summary of all the responsive education programs that we've been awarded in 24-25. So there's some small additions that were announced subsequent to June 2024, but the large change is just the rejection of that forecasted 24-25 benchmark increase for Bill 124 impact of 13 million. But we did have a separate Bill 124 grant for 2.2 million. And you may recall when Bill 124 was announced originally, we were directed for funding that we were getting from other ministries to reach out to those ministries to be reimbursed for the changes in salaries. The ministry came back and kind of decided that they would handle it centrally rather than sort of decentralizing it. So this is the funding to cover those costs. But as we presented a couple of weeks ago, the actual salaries related to that for the majority are already incurred in the prior year. So looking at our expenses, similar to the increase that we saw in classrooms teaching funding, we have an equally large increase for classroom teachers costs, so a $22 million increase over estimates, and that's the projection of moving the teachers to their new collectively bargained grid. Vocational teachers, the increase there of almost 900,000 is a combination of two things. So an increase in the occasional teacher daily rate, but also kind of looking at where we landed at the end of 23-24 and adjusting our occasional teacher cost accordingly. Educational assistants, that increase is largely due to the change in their salaries for Bill 124, as is the ECEs. We did also add 5 additional ECEs in the revised estimates compared to our original estimates. Our professional, paraprofessional, and technical, as CFO Lofts spoke to earlier, this is where you'll see the upgrades for our wireless infrastructure, our cybersecurity, and other resources of a technical nature. In terms of staff development, so there is an increase in staff development from budget estimates, but it's in line with what we saw as our total staff development costs for 23-24. So a couple weeks ago when we presented, we were about 2.5 million. So the change here is largely due to the increase in supply costs because of the daily rate change. And then department heads, it shows a decrease. We haven't decreased the number of department heads. It's just a reallocation of a portion of their salary. It used to be broken out and put in department heads for the release time. it's been reallocated back into classroom teachers. So it's just moving it from department heads to classroom teachers. School admin is, again, that's driven by the PVP grid. So the increase there is that increase in the principal salaries and benefits because of the new grid for 24-25. Coordinators and consultants, again, that is due to the changes in salaries and continuing education. So Aaron spoke to how we were projecting increased students in summer school, and continuing education is where that sort of falls. And so with that, we also saw an increase in costs, as well as the impact of the changes in staffing grids. Looking at our non-school related expenses, board admin, again, this is largely due to the change in salary rates to be in line kind of with what the ministry was forecasting in their increase in funding. Transportation is a slight increase. The two drivers of that are special education, transportation, and French immersion transportation. So they're roughly 100,000 each in terms of increased costs there. In terms of our school operations and maintenance, to go with the increase in salaries and wages because of the grid movement, we're also seeing an increase in HVAC costs and ventilation HEPA filter costs in the revised estimates, as well as a slight increase in contractual service costs and snow plowing and cleaning costs. Those increases were partially offset by decrease in our insurance premium costs for 24-25. Other pupil accommodation costs, the decrease seen there is largely related to a decrease in portable setups. So the good news of opening 3 new schools, we have less new portables to install at our school locations. So we saw a decrease in costs, or budgeting a decrease in costs related to the school setups. In terms of the other, so back at estimates, the ministry was having us accrue a provision for contingency of $9 million. This related to what they were forecasting at the time would be the increase in salaries and benefits. So that money has now been absorbed as part of the staffing costs because the collective agreements have settled. Amortization has stayed relatively flat, and school generated funds, both the expenses and the revenue, we've slightly increased based on where we're trending in the first quarter of 24-25. But again, that's not included in our compliance calculations, and for budgetary purposes, we just net them, even though when we bring back our financial results, there's usually a difference between how much revenue we've collected and the expenses that we've actually incurred. So looking from a compliance perspective, this is really hard to see. So we are compliant when we're looking at our financial reporting or our budget estimates reporting here. We're projecting a balanced budget for compliance purposes. We're also compliant with the other new components as part of the core education funding. There's additional compliance components. So there's a school board admin, which you would be familiar with in the past, but there are also compliances for facilities and transportation. So we're compliant across all areas that the ministry is measuring us on from our budget reporting. And this is just showing the balanced budget. You can see in the in-year change column. So our total accumulated surplus available for compliance purposes, we're forecasting $41.8 million for the end of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Superintendent Lofts, would you like to add anything else?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So for trustees, we have this item has got 3 separate motions. We will be taking one motion at a time. For the first item, Trustee Saunders and Trustee Kelly have declared a conflict of interest, so you will not take part in the discussion. Now you will vote for that item, right? Okay, so I will read the first item and then we'll move it, second it, and then we'll place it on the table. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the 2024-25 salary and benefit revised budget estimates in the amount of $414,835,470. May I have a mover for this item, please?
I can move it. It's Powell.
Trustee Powell moves. Okay, thank you. Looking for a seconder, please. Can I have a seconder?
I'll
I can
second
second
it.
it. Trustee Agnew?
Agnew seconds it. Thank you. Now I shall open up question time. The way we will work on is we have 3 minutes of question time. Trustees will keep asking questions for 3 minutes, and then we will go for 3 minutes of debate. Questions will be directed to staff, and so we will finish question time, debate time, and then call the vote on this item. So trustees, please put your hand up for this particular item. I'm opening up question time. Seeing none? Trustee Carabella, you have your, okay, Trustee Kennedy, you have your hand up or you don't? Trustee Carabella?
Okay, I'm just.
You have questions? You have 3 minutes. Time starts now.
Well, I have, my questions are all mixed together, so that's why I don't have it just specifically for this motion to know which ones are which. So which, we're looking at which page, 38?
We are looking at the motion on the screen. We're talking about the first motion. Can I have that motion up, please? Trustee Carabella, we're talking about this motion. If you have your questions related to this motion. You need a few minutes, you can come back later.
Okay.
Trustee Kennedy?
But just one moment. In terms of the the package that we got, is this regarding Appendix A2 on page 39?
Clarify Superintendent Lofts.
This is relating to anything that has to do with a salary or a benefit. So that's the motion we're voting on as a request of trustees from prior years, separated out this way.
Trustee Kennedy?
Just the question, what if you had a question about revenue? Where would that be under salary and benefits? Or
Superintendent Lofts, they would prefer a question.
That would be open. We're just talking right now just about the expenditure side of it. So if there's a question on revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
We could, or we can do it now even. It's on revenue, so we can.
Okay. Trustee Carabella, are you ready?
Okay, I'll try.
Okay. 3 minutes starts now.
So on page 39, it was staff development. Is that part of what we're talking about?
That's with salaries and benefits. So that is what we're talking about.
Okay. So with that, it shows that there's $1 million extra. And I'm just wondering what happened that there's that much extra PD, or what is the particular topic that required an extra $1 million budgeted for that?
Mr. Cross?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Trustee Carabella. So there's a couple of components that went into this increase. At revised estimates, in our curriculum panel, we kind of had a placeholder for some costs that were just sitting in textbooks and classroom supplies. And now once the school year started and the consultants kind of outlined their plan for the year, some of that money was allocated into PD as required for that development. So we saw an increase in supply teaching costs of about 600,000 of that $1 million relates to the supply costs. So when we're pulling a teacher out of the classroom, we're backfilling it with a supply. And then when we're looking at the remainder, that's more on the expense side, but since I'm talking about it, some of the components relate to SHISM. So costs related to SHISM. We also have an increase in costs for professional development for elementary teachers, as well as secondary teachers. And then we're looking at safe and accepting schools. There was an increase there, as well as early reading screening. So if you recall, there was a new sort of requirement or mandate from the province to do early reading screening from kindergarten to grade 3. So there was some PD involved with that one, so that all the teachers are properly trained on the tools being used to do that screening. And then we saw an increase in math development costs, as well as some well-being and positive schools. So really kind of all over, and can't forget religious training as well. So kind of all over the different departments, but really now that they've had time to plan what they're going to actually try and operationalize in 24-25, that's where we saw the movement there.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella?
And do we ever get a list of all of these PDs that are actually done through you, Mr. Chair?
I will. So PDs are notified, parents are notified of the professional development and put on a board website, Ms. Winden? Correct. So Trustee Carabella, we notify our parents, so that's not really a question for this session, but it's parents are notified and it's on the board website. So go ahead with the next question.
Well, yeah, that wasn't quite what I was wondering. That 2 million doesn't just cover our PD days. It's all what Mr. Cross just told us.
Yeah,
about.
through you, Mr. Chair, a lot of the costs that you're seeing in that professional development from a staffing perspective is driven on days where it's not on a PD day, where we're taking a teacher out of the classroom.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella, keep going.
Okay, I had a question here about the tuition fees or under, I think it's the right area. It's the tuition fees show 4,046,000. Is that from the international students, or where are those tuition fees from?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, that's correct. That's the international student revenue.
Go ahead, Trustee Carabella. Thank you. Up next is Trustee Kennedy. Trustee Kennedy, your 3 minutes starts now.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So regarding PD, so we had estimates, it was voted on, or the budget in June. Yeah, we're 70% off. 1.1 million, we've increased it. So we had a deficit of 1.4 million, and now we've increased now that there's no deficit, we've increased PD by 1.1 million, which is nearly the whole thing. So is that where that nil deficit went to, was PD?
Mr. Cross?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So a part of it would be going to PD, but there was a lot at estimates. We had budgeted no funding coming from deferred. Oftentimes the deferred funding, especially when we're looking at special education funding, is tied to some sort of PD component. So some of that revenue that we're bringing in from deferred is also offsetting the cost of that increase in PD. So we're bringing in over 1.3 million in revenue from deferred, and that cost for PD is $1 million, so kind of is offset there.
Trustee Kennedy, go ahead.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. So we're still off by 1 million, 1.1 or 70%. Like, how did that decision get made to increase PD as opposed to other items, as like going back to the classroom?
Cross?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So as part of kind of revised estimates, we work with the departments to kind of look at their asks. Some of the departments that have that carry forward that was being brought into income, they reevaluated. I think the biggest piece is just like the curriculum component and really reallocating once the consultants sort of establish their plan for 24-25. So typically we try and allocate those costs out at estimates more granular, but for 24-25 we didn't, and kind of we're moving it now. So when we have consultants who are developing programming for our schools, we want to teach the teachers how to actually implement that. So there was a need for increased PD related to it.
I'll ask Superintendent Kroll to add some information. Superintendent Kroll.
You're doing a great job, Mr. Cross, but maybe I can just add.
I'm trying my
Okay,
best.
You're doing great. I'll give you maybe a couple concrete examples that might be able to help. So in grade 1 this year, the Catholic Bishops Association released the new Blessed and Beloved program, which replaces the sort of previous religion family life program. So in order to make sure that our teachers understand what the resource is and how to use it, consultants will be working with all of the grade 1 teachers in the system, releasing them, showing them how to use the resource, giving them time to work together, to network. So that's one example. The last few years, the ministry's released a number of new curriculum documents: math, science, English, geography. Those don't come with resources. Publishers do not publish textbooks to support those resources for sometimes 3 to 5 years at a minimum. So part of professional development is teachers working to create resources so that students have workbooks, so that teachers have lessons. So it's very specific to what's going on in the classroom. We've also had a backlog of PD that we've wanted to do the last couple of years that due to budget constraints, we maybe haven't been able to do. The other piece around professional development is allowing schools release time to work on their student achievement plan indicators, and specifically to target students that are struggling and to put initiatives in place to support those students. As Mr. Cross mentioned earlier, it was the early reading screening initiative. All of that requires training of our kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2 teachers to be able to use the ministry direct given screener. So those are maybe a few concrete examples of where professional development funds go. It's not just releasing teachers. It's making sure that teachers understand the curriculum that the ministry's released, that teachers have time to understand the resources that are provided, and where resources aren't provided, to develop those resources.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if we didn't have a deficit anymore, we wouldn't have had enough resources to put back into PD. It sounds like is that the case?
Superintendent Lofts.
Maybe I'll jump in a little bit. Not necessarily, Trustee Kennedy, through you, Chair. Some of that funding that we had back in June was allocated to a department to be allocated at a later point in time. So if you look at the money that was allocated to curriculum, for example, it was like, as Mr. Cross mentioned, it was in supplies and services. It's been reallocated from supplies and services over to PD. So it's not necessarily, I know it looks like it is, but that's not necessarily the case.
Trustee Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Coordinators and consultants, so that was up about 900,000 versus the estimate in June. Why was that increase so much? It feels like that might have been 7 or 8 more, maybe salary increases, but why was that such a large number?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there isn't any new consultants. It's purely the change in salaries for those positions.
Trustee Kennedy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Where are itinerants on the list? Are they under teachers' salaries?
They're part of the coordinators and consultants, or they fall under the professional, paraprofessional, depending on
Trustee Kennedy.
the need.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Occasional teachers, just wondering where that's up as well. So we apparently had a bit of a benefit of sick leave. So that went down, we were told, but that seemed to have increased quite a bit by about, looks like 900,000 or so. Why would that have gone up?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So similar to the other grid movement, the daily rate increased about 10% for a teacher. So when we factor that in, that's making up a large portion of the increase there. It's just that change.
Trustee Kennedy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Does any of it have to do with a lack of permanent teachers and we're using long-term occasionals in place? Any of that number attributed to that?
Mr. Cross, Superintendent Lofts.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that one is harder to parse out. I don't, from a finance perspective, I don't have that. We do see LTOs for a number of different reasons, but we kind of budget them all the same. Where we might see an impact financially with that is on our qualifications and experience on the teacher. So anytime we're losing a more experienced teacher and replacing it with lesser experienced teacher, the funding gets adjusted. So that's kind of where you can kind of see that impact on the Q&E factor, which we did see going from estimates to revised estimates. The Q&E factor dropped for us about 4%, while the salary bump was about 9%. So we're kind of net 5 on kind of seeing that impact.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy?
Maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Klein, do we have an increase in occasional teachers teaching versus permanent teachers?
Do we have an increase in occasional teachers teaching as opposed to permanent teachers? Let that go over to Superintendent Oldman on that.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. May I? Thank you. So I think what might be informing some of this information is that our fill rate statistics, and that's basically when a permanent staff member is obviously absent on the day and our ability to fill. Unlike other boards, we're sitting at an increasing improvement there in the mid to high 90s. So I think that hasn't traditionally been the case in the last couple of years. So I do think that that's informing it. We wouldn't be able to increase our occasional teacher use when we have a permanent vacancy. That's would be in violation of collective agreements, case law, and the Education Act. So if that helps clarify, I do suspect that we've made great strides to make sure that our fill rates are strong. So I suspect in those increasing statistics we have to support that. I assume that that's what's driving some of the increase in cost that you're seeing.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So you may have answered before, Mr. Cross. So staff development salaries and wages, those are from 960 to 400. Is it that we have to hire new staff for PD to run those programs? Is that why that component is up $500,000?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No,
Mr. Cross, good.
No, it's just if we're taking a teacher out of the classroom, we're filling the class with the supply teacher, or in certain situations, I think, one of the superintendents might be able to shed more light on what our strategy was with the screening, because you had kind of two methods to do the early reading screening. The teachers could be the ones in charge of the development, and then a supply teacher backfills, or you can bring in a supply teacher to do the small group learning with students. So I'm not sure which method we chose, but that can weigh in as well. Superintendent Grohl.
Superintendent Grohl?
Sure, certainly. With regards to the early reading screening, we used the early reading screening itinerant teachers, which came from ministry funds, to go in and cover those classes while the classroom teachers delivered the screening. In January, those teachers now become intervention teachers. They'll be going into schools and providing reading intervention, and they'll also be screening any students who weren't successful in the first screener. The supply cost for this program was just to release the kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2 teachers so they could learn how to use the ministry provided screener with their students. So the training happened with those teachers because they're the ones that are actually doing the screening.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy?
Next question is, Mr. Chair, about revenue. Could we do that in the next topic, maybe?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other trustees have questions? Trustee Murphy?
I have a question. Thank you,
You have the floor.
Mr. Chair. I noticed there's a bit of an increase in funding or in allocated funds for educational assistance. I think like 754,000, and I'm wondering if that is going to cover any shortages that we currently have with EAs in the classroom.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no. So we do have some vacancies in our educational assistant group. It's always kind of one of the areas that's challenging for our board to have a full complement the entire way through the year. But that increase that you're seeing there is just because of the collective agreement changes and the cumulative impact of Bill 124 on wages. So that group, we saw about a 4% increase to their wages. So that's what's making up that amount.
Vice Chair Murphy?
Sure. Just to clarify, though, any current EA shortages that exist, will this address it, or is this like not just related to
the cost? The cost component is just what we're forecasting the cost of all our EAs in our system and our supply EAs in our system to be for the year. In terms of the funding did increase, kind of lockstep in terms of what the rates and the collective agreements are. But with spec ed, we always have an underfunding, and our EAs kind of fall under our spec ed funding. So we're always behind in terms of funding for spec ed, and EAs are a large component of that cost.
Thank you, Superintendent Lofts. You were planning to?
Okay, Michael. No, I was just going to mention, I think okay. Mr. Cross pretty much.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other trustees hand up for question time for the item on the screen. I shall now open up close question time and open up debate time. Do we want to debate on this item? Seeing none, I shall call the vote on the motion in front of us. This was moved by Trustee Powell and seconded by Trustee Agnew. Trustee Agnew, how do you vote?
In favor?
Trustee Philbert is not here. Trustee McGuire?
In favor.
Trustee Yeboah?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee Powell?
Hi, I'm in favor.
Kennedy?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chanara? Trustee O'Hearn-Chanara? Vice Chair Murphy?
I'll abstain.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chanara? And I am in favor. So we have 3 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 abstention. Motion carries. Shall now move on to the next part. Can I have that motion up on screen, please? I will now read the motion, move it, second it, and open up question time again. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the 2024-25 revised budget estimates, excluding salary and benefits, in the amount of $102,527,189. May I ask for a mover, please?
I can move it.
Thank you, Trustee Agnew.
I'll second it. Cool.
Powell. So trustees, when I ask for a mover, seconder, it's not that you're going to vote for it. You're moving to place the item on table, and you can move the item and decide later how you want to vote. Just process of moving things faster. Thank you, trustees, for moving and seconding. I shall now open question time for the motion on the table, and I have a couple of hands up. Give me a second. Trustee Murphy, your hand is up for this item. Sorry. Trustee Kennedy, you have the floor, and your 3 minutes starts now.
Chair, just regarding enrollment, so we're up by 265, which is great, and kindergarten was a decent portion of that. Do we have any idea of any feedback on why did anybody move from another board, or any feedback from new students or parents of why they came to our board?
Superintendent Lofts?
Maybe I'll do you, Chair, maybe Nancy, if, sorry, Superintendent Lawful, if he has any, if you've heard anything on that.
Through you, Chair, to Trustee Kennedy. For the kindergarten program, a lot of that, well, we're attracting parents when we can provide the before and after school care. So when we're getting them in early and they get to sign up, then the providers are able to do that. So that's where we do know that we've made a difference and continue to make a difference this year.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Do we have any more of those programs pending for the future for other schools that don't have it right now?
All of our schools,
sorry,
Chair, Trustee Kennedy, all of our schools have before and after school care. We have new providers. So traditionally it's the YMCA. Some of our other providers, it's around their ability to hire the staff. Okay, because the way the before and after school care programs have, there are DCEs in those classrooms. So if we're taking them from there because we're employing them in the board, those companies have to backfill those jobs.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. School rentals, use of school rentals, use of school/rentals. I see that went up, but from last year's estimates, it's up about $500,000. I was looking at the one from last year. Why has that increased so much? That's significant.
Mr. Cross?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So we work with our facilities department in terms of determining, looking kind of at the last couple of years. So as we came out of COVID, it was sort of slow in terms of the rentals, but now we're seeing the rentals pick up. We also increased some of our rates, so that's also contributing to the increase.
Trustee Kennedy?
So we increased our rates to use our facilities.
Correct.
That's the major difference. What about on the student end? Through Mr. Chair, students who use city facilities. You know, we had some reciprocal agreements I've heard about. Our students seem to be paying more to use city facilities, and we're collecting more for non-students to use our facilities. Can you just maybe unpack that a bit?
I'm not sure if that's a question for Mr. Cross, Superintendent Merrick.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. That part of what Adam said is in there as well. So like we did increase fees. We set our fees based on what it costs us to operate the building. So we increase our fees based on inflation has increased our cost to run our buildings. Therefore, we charge more back to the people who use our buildings. We also have new childcare centers that are open now in some of our new schools that'll come online this year as well and increase our revenue. And then also we are not now subsidizing and offsetting the cost of schools renting municipal centers. So then those will add into that number as well.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. So did we change any previous agreements where we significantly increased the fees to market rates versus discounted rates?
Superintendent Merrick?
The increase was 5%. Our fees went up 5%, which is in line with the municipalities as well. So we align with the public board and the municipalities on their fee rate increases.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So then what's the rest of the increase from? Is it just more usage? Because that's more than 5%.
Superintendent Merrick?
Yeah, so again, new childcare centers opening as well. So there's new centers creating new revenue, and as well, us not renting municipal facilities also adds to the revenue as well. So we're not offsetting that cost with those fees that we collect as well. So all three of those combined, there is actually, as Adam mentioned as well, there are new people renting our facilities. So we try and work with our municipal partners. Like Adam said, during COVID, there was a lot less, like vastly less uptake on our facilities. That's kind of come back as we get further and further away from COVID. And we've seen increase in rentals as well. And we work with our partners and try to increase those rentals.
Trustee Kennedy?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. So why are we hearing some feedback about students paying more for sports to use city facilities? Like significantly, not 5%. Why would that be so much more? And I see that we've gotten more revenue in for the use of our facilities. I feel like it sounds like they're paying more and we're collecting more on our end.
Trustee Kennedy, I think I'll just bring you back to where we are. We are having the conversation about the numbers being presented and the revised budget estimates. That is a different conversation, why and how things happen behind the scene. So let's just focus on the revised budget estimates and as the numbers are presented. Can I bring you back to this conversation?
So we are getting more revenue for the use of our facilities.
Correct.
Are our students paying more for the use of city facilities to use those? Hockey rinks, we don't have any pools. Are they paying more?
I think that's okay. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're paying what it costs to rent that facility. So if it costs $300 an hour to rent a sheet of ice, that's what the cost that's passed on to the school. In the past, the central board has covered that. Now that's no longer covered. So that's they're paying the actual cost to use that facility. There is no agreement between the board or in the municipalities to give each other use of facilities for free. We actually pay each other what the cost is.
Superintendent Lofts?
Just that, so the question is more, why is the city charging more? Is that the question?
No, so why is the board no longer covering that? I just heard that the board is no longer covering that.
But I thought the question though was, why is the city's fees gone up and it's costing parents more money for?
Students are paying more to play basketball, hockey, however.
But that's not from us, right? That's from the city or the town, right?
So
that's really
ours
not
went
our
up, and I noticed that theirs went up. So did any agreement end where we're now collecting more? The board is no longer covering the increase for students, it sounds like. So we have a surplus where we have a nil.
No, that's not necessarily the case. So I think your question was originally on the town, right? Why is the town's cost per, I think Ryan or Superintendent Merrick mentioned like a sheet of ice. We don't know, Trustee Kenny, why the town charges what for what they do. So we don't really have that control. All we can control is what we charge for ours, and our rates have gone up by the 5%, adding additional, as Superintendent Merrick said, we have additional facilities, daycare facilities, childcare facilities, which also increase our revenue, and we have more use of our facilities. So all that combined has increased our revenue. It's as far as what the rates are for the towns. we don't really have any control over what they charge.
Thank you. That was my understanding as well. That's why I said, let's get back to this conversation. Trustee Kennedy, let's go ahead with your next question.
So why is the board no longer covering that cost for students to use those facilities? We now have, we had a $5 million surplus last year. This year we're nil, but we're no longer covering that. So they're paying for it. Why is the board no longer paying?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Again, as we remember, Trustee Kennedy, we did have a deficit the prior year as well, right? So it's not something to kind of say we had a surplus this year, so things changed dramatically. With respect to funding optional programming, for which is what this is. So I think Superintendent Merrick mentioned that if the students are using the facilities, then just like any other program, you would be responsible through school generated funds to cover the cost of the facility. Obviously, we're not charging to use our sports, our football fields, things like that. That's not what, there's no charge for any of that. It's more for these ad hoc costs that we as a board have to charge. That's for optional programming.
Thank you, Superintendent Lofts and Trustee Kennedy. We did have a deficit last year. Staff has taken a lot of pain to come to a balanced, revised budget here, and I think we need to appreciate that. And let's continue. Your next question, please.
So just to clarify, so students are paying more because the board is no longer covering that, but we were in the past. Is that fair to say? The use of city facilities?
Superintendent Merrick?
Yeah, they are, but they're paying for the cost to run that program. So if it costs X amount of dollars to run a hockey team, then they pay that. Those fees are passed on to the students. And there is no change to any of the agreements. The agreement has always been in place like that. It's just in the past, it was covered centrally by the board. I mean, we could cover that, but that means we have to cut somewhere else. And we're in a balanced budget situation here now, and we're spending every penny that we bring in this year. So we have to make difficult decisions on where to spend those dollars.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Done? Okay, thank you. Up next is Trustee Saunders. Trustee Saunders, your 3 minutes starts now.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if Mr. Cross could share his slide deck, because the one I've got is actually missing numbers. The one that came in the package, like I've got for educational assistance, I've got blank. So I'm just wondering if he would be able to share that deck with us.
Can I ask the question of Mr. Cross? Something missing in the package?
Yeah, if you could just send the package, that would help.
Thank you, Trustee Saunders. Any further
questions?
questions?
Next question. We've got an expense item called professional, paraprofessional, and technicians. There was an increase of about $6 million this year. I'm just wondering what does that represent, and what happened to cause that increase in expenses?
Mr. Cross, or
sorry, it's on Appendix A3. So at least that's what I got here. It's A3, and it comes out as professional, paraprofessional, and technicians.
Sorry, my mic's not on. For professional, paraprofessional, and technical, there's an increase of 1.3 million compared to estimates. So some of the other kind of values in that A3 related to it. So as of November, we're at 4.8 million of our budget used, which is roughly 30% of our overall budget. And then last year in our actuals, we had 9.3 million in professional, paraprofessional. So are you looking at the difference between estimates and last year?
What is this?
Trustee Saunders?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what exactly are these?
Yeah, so
and what's the big difference?
through you, Mr. Chair. So professional, paraprofessional, and technicians includes kind of some of our our professionals within the school board. So when we're looking at our psychologists, our social workers, our child and youth service counselors, as well as our IT staff. So our IT staff that works and supports the schools, those are all encompassed within the professional, paraprofessional, and technicians. I don't have with me today a variance analysis on why the total from revised estimates has increased compared to actuals, but I can speak to the 1.3 million increase from estimates to revised estimates. And with respect to that, so that's where we were putting our wireless infrastructure, our cybersecurity costs, as well as the staffing cost increases for the rate changes from Bill 124 and collective agreements, because some of the members that fall under this are unionized members via QP or our APSSP group. And then when we're looking at some of the others, we have like electronic resources that support those professionals are included in here. So we saw an increase of about 100,000 in that, and some software renewal of 150,000. So that's contributing to that, but I can look into the 9 versus the 15 and provide that at a later date.
Trustee Saunders?
Yeah, the next question I had is I noticed I just did a rough estimate that our special education expenditures have dropped 7 or 8%. I'm just wondering what would be driving that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So one of the things that we did when the core education funding changed, and there's a special education component within that funding, it's still envelope, so similar to the old funding. The funding we get for special education, you have to spend on special education needs. We always exceed what we're funded for, and this year is no different. But historically, we had grouped mental health in with special education, so it's kind of under the umbrella of that. But with the funding change, we've broken out the mental health component and not shown it in special education anymore. So we're kind of trying to keep the true special education costs and look at them as a whole, and then look at mental health and that funding separately rather than kind of commingling them together. So that's kind of what's driving decrease there. And then in terms of our overall gap in special education, we're projecting about a $4 million deficit in special education this year, which is down from the prior year. And again, part of that is bringing in some of that deferred revenue. So it's kind of a one-time pickup for special education this year, just because of the ministry sort of forcing boards to utilize that funding in 24-25. But yeah, we're down to about 4 million in projected deficit for this year.
Trustee Saunders?
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. Just I was looking at Appendix B, and I noticed that our total operating expenditures are down almost $15 million or 3%. I'm just wondering, sort of on a macro level, can you just sort of give us an idea what happened that would bring the expenses down that much?
Mr. Cross?
Just bear with me for a moment. Again, we're looking through you, Mr. Chair, we're looking compared to prior year.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you recall in 23-24, when Bill 124 settled, we had to do the retro payments or accrue for the retro payments for years 2019 through to 23-24. So a large change, and you can kind of see it in the salaries area. So our salaries and benefits are down 20 million compared to last year, and that's just the cumulative impact of 2019 through 2024 retro.
Trustee Saunders?
Just a final, I know this came up earlier through you, Mr. Chair. We were sort of interested in looking at professional development. Is there a way that we could get a detailed subledger of our professional development expenditures, just to get an idea of what we're spending on and what's maybe driving some of these costs?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it's the will of the board to bring a report, we can certainly do that at a later date. We can incorporate it as part of our quarterly reporting as well, if that suits the needs of the board. Really, at the direction of the board on how they want to see the information.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. So Trustee Saunders, if you need a report, it'll have to be a motion. So we'll have to put a motion, bring it back to the board, discuss, trustees will discuss, we'll vote on it. And so that's up to you. So that can be done later. So you have further questions?
Just one small last one.
Go ahead.
I'm just, where do our legal expenses land? What line item do they land in? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Cross?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair. So usually when we're looking at our legal fees, they're in the categories that say fees and contractual services. They can be spread out amongst the different departments. So school operations like facilities will have their own legal fee component as they work with lawyers for their development projects, and then in admin. So when we're looking at our fees and contractual services on the admin appendice, that's where the majority of it would be from a financial and a HR perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Saunders. Trustee Carabella, you're up next. You have the floor.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. I had the similar question with the legal fees. So there's no like final, like when you put the legal fees from everywhere together, what is that final amount?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we can summarize how we have it in our GL. In terms of the budget, we have about 540,000 budgeted for legal fees for 24-25.
Trustee Carabella?
Okay, then I wanted to ask you, I hope this is part of this section, but which line here shows the increase in funding due to us now mandating the grade 11 Contemporary Voices course? Is that in here? Does that show up in here? Thank you.
Superintendent Lofts?
Yeah, through you, Chair, to Trustee Carabella. It would be part of our classroom, just like it would be any other year. It doesn't, we don't differentiate between that.
Just, Superintendent Kroll?
Sure. Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. There is additional money provided by the Ministry for Indigenous Education, though. I couldn't tell you where it shows up in here, to be honest, but there is specific dedicated money for First Nation, Métis, Inuit, Indigenous education. So if we required additional funds for that grade 11 course, we have money provided by the ministry to provide the training and resources.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella?
Okay, I have a question about the EDC revenue. So what can it be used for? Just to remind me.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So it is prescribed, like there's education development charges legislation, and, but essentially it's for all like the costs that go into acquiring land and preparing that land to be built upon.
Trustee Carabella?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So about the trustee expenses too, there's a line on the professional development shows like $52,000. Can that be clarified?
Mr. Cross?
It's on page 42 of the package.
Maybe if, Madam Chair, through you, Chair, to Trustee Carabella, we did have to add, and I'm not sure if it's in that line item or not, Mr. Cross, but we did have to add for as some items that we talked about in camera that we were discussing with respect to yeah. So I could mention it to you after. Yes. So.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella?
Okay, and regarding also the trustee expenses, though, the other expenses, is that also something? There's a extra $100,000.
Yeah, I could mention that too, through you, Chair, to Trustee Carabella. That one would be if part of the new legislation that came out, and this is a amount we had to put there in the event of an integrity commissioner is ever required. We had to put some money aside for it. So if we don't use it, it would go back into it, but it's also money that we had to budget for now because it's not funded by the ministry. So that may be something, Trustee Carabella, that you don't need it. It just falls falls back out of there, but we had to put it in there.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 52,000 is actually the trustees' annual allowance, so the $3,000, as well as the student trustee, so they can attend conferences. Like
Thank you.
Sorry, it's every trustee's like annual expense allowance, the $3,000 plus some conferences for the student trustees, the 52,000.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella.
Okay, on page 38, this is about the school generated funds. So it shows that the actuals were 13 million and the new estimated is 15 million. So I'm just, and then they even themselves out or something, they cross each other out. So I'm just clarifying that 13,000 that was last year, the actuals are 13 million. Did they get all used up then in each individual school, or should there be some like carryover somewhere?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was carryover last year. I think it was between 200 and 300,000 that went unspent. But the one thing to remember with the school generated funds is, especially at the secondary panel, they do collect a bunch of fees prior to the start of the school year. So for accounting purposes, you record the revenue last year and the expenses are incurred this year, but really they're collecting those funds for the current year because they want to get the money in before they have the expense come out.
Thank you, Trustee
Mr.
Carabella.
Chair, go ahead, just kind of add on to that. And I know Trustee Carabella, you mentioned too, you saw it going in and out the exact same amount, right? We do that purposely so it doesn't impact, we don't get any benefit as a board around this table contributing to our surplus or deficit budget. So we make sure that for budgeting purposes, we have to show an amount. So we make sure it's equal so they net each other out. Because anything generated through the schools, it stays with the schools and with the parents that generate that. We don't collect it for our own board initiatives here.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. How many minutes do I still have?
You have 1 minute, 14 seconds.
Okay. So back to the student, the trustees, where it says the benefits is 8,000. Is that, like, I'm just not aware of which benefits that is, that health benefits? Because
Yeah, I believe that's EHT, I think, is one of them. I had it written down at some point.
Superintendent Lofts. Go ahead.
I believe they would the statutory benefits that are associated with the honorary.
Trustee Carabella.
just stop rushing me. Hang on a second. Let me find my next question.
Okay, I paused it. Okay, Trustee Carabella, let's go on. Okay, you're done? Thank you. So we had Trustee Kennedy done, Trustee Saunders and Trustee Carabella done. We have no other trustees asking questions now. Do we want to open up debate time, trustees? No? Okay, so I'll call the vote on the second part of the motion. It's on our screen. This motion was moved by Trustee Agnew, seconded by Trustee Powell. With that, I shall call the vote on this item. Trustee Kelly? Trustee Kelly, are you there? Come back. Trustee Saunders?
Opposed.
Trustee Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Filbert, not here. Trustee McGuire?
In favor.
Trustee Yeboah?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee Powell?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
Opposed.
Trustee Ohan Chanara?
In favor.
Vice Chair Murphy?
Opposed.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
And trustee Duarte is in favor. We have 4 in favor, 5 in favor, 4 opposed, no abstention, motion carries. Shall now move on to the last part. Can I have the motion on the screen, please? Thank you. I will now read the motion. Resolved. Thank you. I will now read the motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the use of reserves as follows. A decrease of $3,417,639 in facility capital reserves, $202,551,787 in committed capital project reserves, a decrease of $98,298 to the school activities fund reserve, and $964,150 in unallocated reserves. May I have a mover for this item, please? Looking for a mover.
Move it.
Trustee Vice Chair Murphy moves it. Looking for a seconder, please. Can I have someone second it, please?
Powell.
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
Powell, thank you. Seconds it. I shall now open up question time once again. Trustees, Trustee Carabella, your hand is up from now or previous? Okay. Trustee Saunders, your hand is up for this item?
Yes.
Okay, Trustee Saunders, your time starts now.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, so for clarity here, so we've got a minus 3.4 million in facilities reserve. So this is amounts coming out of the reserve. Is that correct? Or going into?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's correct. So the way the reserves have to work for the profits, anytime we're using funds from our capital reserve, we move to a different account that's basically to cover the amortization costs. So we're earmarking this to cover amortization from funds that or assets that we purchase with our own funds rather than ministry funds.
So that means
Trustee Saunders?
Removing.
Yeah, yes. It'll be removed.
Okay. And then my second question is, why do we have almost $1 million in unallocated reserve? What's driving that?
Thank you, Mr. Cross.
Sure.
Superintendent Lofts?
It's just basically in our savings account right now. We haven't allocated for a purpose. We could have moved it to the operating reserve, Trustee Kennedy or Trustee Saunders, but we just left it unallocated for now. We'll look at it more when we do our financial statements at the end of the year.
Trustee
Saunders. It's just sitting as it unallocated.
Trustee Saunders? Okay, thank you. Any other trustees have questions? I need to see a hand up. Trustee Carabella, your hand up. You have 3 minutes. Time starts now.
So the total of reserves is the total of these numbers, or is there others?
Superintendent?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, this is just how we're ending up balanced from a compliance perspective. So we're basically just kind of moving money from, in the top two's case, we're moving money from the capital reserve to the committed capital projects reserve. And then as CFO Loss spoke to before, when it comes to the school activities funds, we're kind of clearing the deficits that schools incurred. So to do that, basically you're using your savings. So we're using the 98,000, but from a compliance perspective, we have 41 million available for compliance on a total accumulated surplus. This is just how we're allocating the in-year.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella? Trustee Kennedy, your hand is up. You have 3 minutes.
Would it be possible to see those reserve changes versus the reserves we have right now? Maybe not now, because you don't have them. Oh.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I can circulate the presentation after, and you can kind of see what the impact of those adjustments are to the reserves. Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy?
So for facility capital reserve. So we had about 7 million 2023 and just over 6 last year. And if we remove 3.4, we're going to be down to 2.6 from 7. Is that comfortable going forward for you?
Trustee.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the capital reserves are becoming more complicated in terms of the impact that they're having. So prior to 2019, it didn't impact us from a compliance perspective. Now the amortization that we incur every year impacts our compliance. So when we're trying to have a balanced budget, you basically have to like save for the amortization, even though you have money in your reserve to cover it if you want to be balanced from a ministry perspective. So you're almost like double saving for it, which takes away funds from other areas of the school board. So we're kind of looking at it more critically going forward. And if there's something that we absolutely need to do, then we will use it. The main activity that we see coming out of this kind of recently has been replacements of our tracks and turfs because we generate revenue from it. So that helps offset the amortization cost. But we work pretty closely with facilities, so Ryan's team, to make sure that we have a healthy balance in kind of like all envelopes of capital funding. But yeah, because it's impacting us from compliance, there's a little bit of being a bit shy to use the funds going forward.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Can you move committed capital projects over to that? Like if we have one more year like this, we'll be negative, right? For capital facility reserve?
Yeah.
What would we do in that case?
So through you, Mr. Chair. So the committed capital projects has over $12 million in it. So these are projects that we've built over the last few years from our reserves, and that's sort of there to sit and cover the cost of amortization. So yeah, if when you look at our reserves, we do have a healthy portion sitting in unallocated right now. So at a later date, we can come to the board with a proposal to move some of those unallocated funds into the capital reserve to replenish it, and then if the board sees that that's a good investment, then they can approve that motion, and we can do that. So right now we've kind of kept it open, knowing that it's sort of a double-edged sword when we spend capital from our savings because of that double counting of amortization factor.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy.
Thank you. When you reference compliance or being compliant, so these are estimates, revised estimates of compliance. Is it really the actuals that are the real issue with being I mean, you want to have estimates that are compliant, but it's the actuals that's the major issue if those don't follow the reserves and are no longer compliant? Is that the major concern if there is one?
Through Mr. Chair, they do look at it from estimates and revised estimates perspectives as well, because that's kind of giving the ministry a snapshot or a projection as to where they think all the school boards are going to land. Obviously, there are different financial situations across the province, and depending on what's being presented in estimates or revised estimates, the ministry may take further steps to address issues if there's a non-compliance that they feel is more problematic. Like if there was a structural deficit at a school board, they'd be more inclined to kind of go in or have a consultant go in and sort of help that school board work themselves out of that perspective. But they do look at them at all levels. I would say up until last year, they were more looking at estimates and revised versus financial, but then at financial, they've now incorporated more kind of reporting at the end of the year around this. So it's really all three times they're looking at this to make sure that what they're seeing across the province is okay.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy. Done? Okay. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The 98,000 to the school activities fund reserve. Can you explain that to me a little bit more, please? Thank you.
Yeah. through you, Mr. Chair. So some of our schools went into operating deficits last year from what they were budgeted as a school. And what we're proposing to do, because we had an increase in our accumulated surplus last year, usually we would deduct those overages from the next or subsequent year's budget, but we haven't done that. We're just going to pay for those costs out of our savings rather than passing that on to the schools. Because what can happen in those situations is it just becomes like a perpetual thing. If you're constantly deducting, then they have less money this year, which then they feel pressure to spend over to address the needs. So spending it at the board level out of savings prevents the schools from having that kind of hurdle to go over at the start of the year. So they're starting with their true budget. They don't have to worry about some of it being clawed back. Because it does, like when a school does go over their allotted money, it does impact the board as a whole. Like this is school budget, not SGF. So there's two components that schools get, right? They get the SGF, the funds that they raise for themselves, but then we also allocate a portion of the core ed funding to the board. So that 90,000 you're seeing is or 98,000 is the result of last year. Some of our schools, the cumulative total of those schools that went over their funding allotment last year was 98,000, and rather than deducting that from their budgets this year, we're just covering the cost centrally so they can keep their current year budget whole.
Thank you. Asha Murphy?
And just to follow up, is it in previous years have schools, gone over their budget? Is that something that happens regularly? Or?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So we have seen it in the last few years that schools have gone over their allotments, and that could be for a number of different reasons. They might have to have a significant expenditure this year versus kind of other expenses. So if they're doing a significant refresh of supplies or technology, sometimes those costs can run higher than what their annual budget would allot for. So those are kind of times where we would see it. But we have seen some boards, particularly coming out of the pandemic when our school generated funds weren't as high. But now that we're seeing kind of a return to the school generated funding levels, that gives them extra money on that side that they can then spend appropriately based on those needs. So like their total pool is growing. So we're seeing less deficits at the school level, but last year was trying as we were trying to balance the budget throughout the year. So we saw a few schools go over.
Asha Murphy?
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see no other trustees' hands up. So I shall now close question period. Open up debate time. Does anybody want to debate? If not, I shall call the vote. Okay. Yes, Trustee Kennedy. Do you like to debate? Give me a second. Time starts now. 3 minutes.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So just regarding the budget in general and the surplus, sometimes it is hard to support some of the numbers when we may need a motion before, when there's not enough time because you don't get the numbers ahead of time. It's only a week and there's really not enough time maybe for the future. But just generally speaking, what I'm seeing is I'm glad we have a no deficit, but what we are seeing is that students tend to be paying a little bit more for sports, more for transportation to go to those sports games. Schools are being downloaded the cost of commissionaires and lunchroom supervisors. So for those reasons, I'd like to see maybe some more go back into the school, the classroom, and the students versus, the board and PD and other items. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. I'll just pass a comment here. I think our role is, and staff has brought a balanced revised estimate here. And if we have to spend money, Trustee Kennedy, just to input things in perspective, we will not be able to bring a balanced revised estimates. Superintendent Loft, am I correct? Okay, so just so that we understand where we are. So with that, I shall now call the vote on the resolution in front of us. It was moved by Vice Chair Murphy, seconded by Trustee Powell. Trustee Saunders, how do you vote?
Opposed?
Trustee Agnew? Trustee Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee McGuire?
In favor.
Trustee Yeboah?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
Opposed.
Trustee Ohan Janara?
I'm in favor.
Vice Chair Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly? Trustee Kelly? And I'm in favor. We have 5 in favor, 3 opposed, no abstention. Motion carries. Shall now move on to item 9.4, which was 6.1.2.2, policy I-46, trustee communications and correspondence to the board. Trustee Ohan Chanara, could you please read that motion?
Absolutely. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the policy committee that policy I-46 trustee communications and correspondence to the board be approved.
Thank you. Trustee Ohan Chanara moves this motion. This policy has come to us from, this item has come to us from policy. We need only a mover. We do not need a seconder for this. Trustee Ohan Chanara, as policy chair, just wanted to know if this item was discussed and debated at a policy committee meeting.
Yes, it has. A couple policy meetings. We've discussed this policy. Yes.
Trustee Ohan. Trustee Carabella, you asked for this item to be removed, so I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We can just take it to a vote. Had a lot of discussion.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. With that, trustees have any questions on this? I see Trustee Kennedy, your hand is up. Okay. With that, I shall call the vote on item 9.4, which was 6.1.2.2, policy I-46, trustee communication and correspondence to the board. It has come to us from policy. We do not need a seconder. Trustee Agnew, how do you vote?
In favor.
Trustee McGuire?
In favor.
Trustee Yeboah?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
I'm opposed.
Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
Opposed.
Trustee Ohan Chanara?
In favor.
Vice Chair Murphy?
Opposed.
Trustee Kelly? Trustee Kelly? Trustee Saunders?
Opposed?
Trustee Kelly is there?
In favor.
And Trustee Duarte is opposed. We have 4 in favor, 5 opposed. The motion fails. We shall go back. We shall now move on to our next order of business is staff reports, item 10.1. 10.1, Milton number 11, Catholic Elementary School Boundary Review. Superintendent Merrick, please present your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, we present the Milton number 11 school boundary review report. As trustees would know that we had funding approved for the new Milton number 11 school. And therefore we need to form a committee to perform the corresponding school boundary for the new school. The proposed dates are presented for you in the report. Our hope is to start the committee work in February 2025. And hopefully bring it back to board in fall 2025 for approval with the projected school opening for Milton number 11 in September of 2026. So you have one resolution in your package tonight that will bring forward to the January board meeting. But myself or planning staff are here to take any questions that trustees may have on this report tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. Trustees, do we have any questions for Superintendent Merrick or staff? Seeing none, thank you, Superintendent Merrick and staff, and we look forward to to moving forward with the boundary review in time to come. Thank you so much for presenting your report. Our next order of business is information items. Item 11.1, Director's Report. Director Klein, please present your report.
Thank you, Chair, and you should see that on the screen right now. A moment. So the Director's Report, as usual, follows the priorities or the pillars of the MYSP. As a highlight, certainly something we're proud of in the board is the work we do in STEAM and STEM. And I wanted to highlight that on March the 6th, there will be a in-person innovation showcase. That's at St. Francis Xavier. We seem to have a lot of these at St. Francis as the host school for many of these events. And this is an opportunity to highlight innovative solutions to problems that our students from grades 4 to 12 across the system have engaged in collaboratively. A number of clubs and activities and groups from around the system that promote STEAM will also be in attendance, and members from the community will be there as well. Trustees, of course, are welcome to attend. Many of you have heard of the Bay Area Science and Engineering Fair. That will be taking place at that time of year as well. And many of the students from around this board will be engaged in that as well. And these are sort of our future scientists, the future citizens of the world that will hopefully make our globe a better place. In terms of what's going on in our faith life and our gospel in action, just to piggyback on what Monsignor had noted earlier about we are in the third week of Advent, which has a focus of joy. And of course, we're heading toward a Jubilee year in 2025 that has a focus on hope. Our schools are continually engaged in activities that reflect those gospel values. And just to name but a few that have been highlighted by staff for this report: support to Teens for Teens and adoptive family programs in our schools. Several schools are supporting Halton Alive's Boxes of Hope campaign. Many angel trees in our schools are there to gather and collect gifts, gift cards, and money to provide for those less fortunate in the community, including those families in our own schools. Collection of food and winter vegetables to support St. Vincent de Paul Society. Mitten trees, collecting warm mitts, gloves, and scarves, and socks for unhomed persons. Toy drives that contribute to local programs. Probably aware that Christmas isn't always a wonderful, happy season for many people. For many families, it's quite the opposite. So the opportunity to bring some light and joy into those homes is something that our children and our young adults and our staff do day in and day out. Several schools have been joining the parish programs to collect for Christmas giving. There's been carol singing, Christmas concerts, and visits to seniors' homes and extended care facilities. I was lucky enough today to be at Ascension, and it was packed, filled with parents who were there to celebrate kindergartens all the way through grade 8, emceed by people, two students who could easily make the big time someday in terms of their ability to facilitate. And the technology was second to none in terms of the how they were able to convey that. That was a wonderful, wonderful day. That goes on everywhere throughout our board. Classes creating Christmas cards and goodie bags to local seniors, Advent masses, prayer services, pageants are in the schools like the one today. Babysitting night where secondary students look after children to allow parents to do Christmas shopping, etc. And proceeds to charity. Babysitting, I wish I had that a few years ago. And of course, we have our significant days of recognition as well. Some of these are provincial priorities or national priorities. Some of them are ones that fit into faith and religion. And some of those are ones that have a particular focus in our schools as well. And that is for January of 2025. We have worked since September to encourage schools, as we have every year, to participate in the OCSA, that's the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association, short video contest. Those videos, as they have been in past years, have been created by students to exemplify the wonders and the beauty of Catholic schools. And they do link to the themes for the Catholic Education Week that comes in the spring. we're lucky enough to have 6 submissions that were entered from our board to OXTA. Anyone in this room and beyond can avail themselves of going to that website and taking a look at all of them. I certainly went through all of ours, all 6 of ours. It is kind of like, which is your favorite child? I love them all, and they were all very, very good. And certainly we had some of our student trustees here who were part of one of them as well. So since they're in the room, I love that one the best, but I really love them all equally. But if you are to look at them, you'll certainly see that our students did wonderful work, and creativity, the passion, and the commitment to Catholic education is heartwarming. But I will say, if you look at ones from other boards as well, it is even more reassuring and heartwarming. And I would really recommend that people do it. If you go on it, you do have to go through a bit of a process of registering, but then you can vote. Sadly, you can only vote once. And so I would say for everyone, this is a really good opportunity. If you have family, if you have older members of your family, grandparents, or people who haven't had students in a Catholic system for many years, sometimes they wonder, oh, what's it like now? If you were to look at those, I think you would be sold on what we do, and that message of Catholic schools hasn't changed in the generations that they've been certainly here building a better Ontario for all those years. So I'd encourage you to look at those because they are wonderful and a great way to start the Christmas season. There's a deadline for that. Please get on and again vote for those. We'd love to be able to win provincially, and we'll hear about that in the spring, the AGMs. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Klein, for presenting your report. Trustees, do we have any questions for Director Klein? Please put your hand up if you have questions. Seeing none, thank you, Director Klein. We shall move on to our next order of business, which is construction report. Item 11.2, Superintendent Merrick, please present your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, we have the construction report for December in front of you. It's the last update for St. Kateri in Milton, and you can see the final touches going on the school here. In the pictures there, you have some work being done to assemble the servery. There's the chapel in the top right photo. You can see the gym floor down in the bottom left photo, and the theater, just getting the flooring put in the theater in the bottom right photo. So just the final touches going on there. They're hoping to do all the final fire verification over the holidays, and the whole section will open up for students to start when they come back from the holiday break. Happy to take any questions from trustees.
Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. Trustees, any questions for Superintendent Merrick? Seeing none, thanks for presenting the report, Superintendent Merrick. We shall now move on to item 11.3, 4-year ministry enrollment projections. Superintendent Lofts, please present your report.
Through you, Chair, please find the ministry enrollment projection report for review. These projections were forwarded to the ministry on November 22nd, 2024. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Superintendent Lofts. Trustees, any questions for Superintendent Lofts? Seeing none. Thank you, Superintendent Lofts, for this report. We shall now move on to our next order of business is miscellaneous information, student trustees update. Student trustees, please present your report. Trustee McGuire or Trustee Yeboah?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you. So kind of starting out with the pillar of achieving. So as exams and culminating season approaches, many schools have been implementing a lot of resources through wellness groups and student councils, and really been helping with planning for helpful initiatives that promote good study habits and mental health practices during this stressful season. So it's really great to see that our teachers and students within our school board are really helping out with this stressful season. As we know, the exam season is right after the break, so students are getting really stressed, but our schools are really helping out with making sure that we have resources available to us to really thrive during this stressful time. So moving along to the Believing pillar, last month, student trustees, me, Lauren, and Sophia, were able to kind of put together our OSTA video contest submission with our student senate, and it was a really great opportunity to kind of foster leadership and different roles within our senate. So we really want to thank our senators who contributed to that video. And it was really great to see them helping out with that. And also, we just want to kind of throw out a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone. And, you know, as Catholics, as is next year is a Jubilee year, so it's very exciting. And we're really looking forward to hope and joy as aligning with the theme for this year, which is Pilgrims of Hope. So I can move along to Lauren.
Yeah, thank you, Student Trustee Yeboah. I will take over for Belonging and Becoming. So last month, our Student Senate had the pleasure of having Superintendent Cordero come to our Senate meeting. So he spoke with the senators about topics that are very relevant to students right now, like bullying policies, vaping, and how to use their position as student leaders to kind of promote safe schools, as that's part of his portfolio. The students thoroughly enjoyed this presentation, so thank you so much to Superintendent Cordero. We really appreciate it. Senators during the meeting too were also able to discuss between different schools and stuff. We paired them up with I guess senators from schools different from their own, so that kind of helped them to create new ideas and kind of have that synergy for different leadership styles. Also too, as we celebrate the Advent season, many of our schools are participating in like holiday themed drives where we collect coats, hygiene items, food, other things that are needed by our HDSB communities in need. The donations from our school communities, from our students, parents, you know, everybody in our communities is a really great way to make all students in the HDSB feel welcome and have what they need to like belong. And then with our Becoming section, we also wanted to acknowledge the excited nature of all the openings of our new schools and stuff. Specifically in the new year, we're going to be having, I think there's specific ceremonies for St. Kateri and St. Josephine Bakita. So we're really looking forward to that. That's a really exciting time for these new schools and all the students who are attending these new schools. I also recently had the pleasure of attending a meeting with the board's mental health staff, a number of them, and we had a really great discussion about mental health and student leadership efforts within mental health and well-being. And they will be present at our February Student Senate meeting to present to our students. So we're really looking forward to future collaboration with them. But that's all we have for today. We'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you, student trustees, for presenting your report. Trustees, any questions for our student trustees? Saying none, thank you for presenting your report. Really appreciate that. With that, we shall move on to next item, 12.2, OCSTA update. Trustee O'Hearn Chinada, please present your report.
Thank you, Chair and fellow colleagues and staff. So it's attached to the agenda, but it talks about a few things. You know, we had a directors meeting and Michael Belmore, our president of OXTA, talked about his opportunity to meet with Minister Dunlop. They talked about many, many different subjects, of which Bill 98, or the Better Schools and Students Outcome. Under the heading of Bill 98, the members of the board of directors of OXTA, we discussed a lot of concerns with regard to certain regulations flowing from Bill 98. There will be additional information shared with the Catholic school boards in the near future. Catholic Virtual Ontario, or CVO, it continues to grow. So Anna Bryan reported to the directors that there's initiatives they're planning for 21 more additional courses this year. All along, 800 teachers have worked in collaboration along with trustees and directors of educations and superintendents. So it's really on a great trajectory. Talked about Catholic Trustees Seminar, January 17th and 18th. I think we've talked about a few times this evening already. Catholic education theme, there is a kit. There are links to these packages. The 2025 Pilgrims of Hope Advanced Kit that we all have. Director Klein spoke about the short video contest. I'm very proud. There was a lot of nagging, but not too much nagging, a lot of submissions, and we're very proud of what was submitted so far. So on behalf of directors of OXTA, we wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, a very safe and happy holiday. Any questions? I'm ready to answer.
Trustee O'Hearn Chinada. Trustees, any questions for Trustee O'Hearn Chinada? Seeing none, thank you, Trustee O'Hearn Chinada, for presenting your report. We shall now move on to item number 13, correspondences. We have no correspondences today. Our next order of business is open question period. Director Klein, have any questions been submitted? Thank you, Director Klein. So there are no questions. We skip that. Item number 15, in camera. We do not have to go in camera, so we skip that. And finally, resolution regarding absentees. We had all trustees present today at some point or the other. So we shall skip over this item. And we move on down to our next order of business is item number 17, adjournment and closing prayer. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Trustee Saunders moves, looking for a seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Vice Chair Murphy. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Trustee Carabella, please lead us in the closing prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to express our best wishes to all the students, staff, parents, and volunteers at our HCDSB community for a blessed Christmas. It is the third week of Advent, and as we approach Christmas, and Advent reminds us it is a time of waiting for the birth of Jesus, waiting for a baby to be born. This can bring our attention to our Lord in the womb of Our Lady. And I came across a very meaningful prayer called A Prayer to the Redeemer in the Womb that I'd like to share. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord Jesus Christ, you took our human nature upon yourself. You shared our life and death, our childhood and adulthood. You also shared our time in the womb. While still God, while worshipped and adored by the angels, while almighty and filling every part of the universe, you dwelt for 9 months in the womb of Mary. You were our Redeemer in the womb, our God who was a preborn child. Lord Jesus, we ask you to bless and protect the children who today are in their mother's womb. Save them from the danger of abortion. Keep their mothers, give their mothers the grace to sacrifice themselves in body and soul for their children. Help all people to recognize in the preborn child a brother, a sister saved by you, our Redeemer in the womb. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
So once again, thank you, Trustee Carabella. I'd like to wish all our parents, staff, students, guardians, and administrators a very Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful and safe Christmas holiday. Thanks for a great meeting. Good night.